In a quiet corner of Ireland, nestled amongst rolling green hills, lies the village of Ballinan. For as long as anyone could remember, a tradition held fast on Halloween night. Old Man Hemlock, the village's quietest resident, would trek to the top of Hollow Hill, a lone peak that watched over the valley like a silent guardian. There he would light a single sturdy lantern. The villagers believed its warm, steady glow was a beacon, a gentle guide for the wandering souls of those long past, helping them find their way home on that one special night of the year. Its light was a comfort, a promise that no one was ever truly lost. But this year, something was different. As dusk settled on Halloween, casting long, purple shadows across the fields, the villagers gathered by their windows. In doorways, their eyes turned towards the familiar silhouette of Hollow Hill. They waited. The minutes stretched into an hour, and then another. But the hilltop remained dark. The familiar, comforting light of Hemlock's lantern never appeared. A nervous hush fell over Ballinan. The absence of the light felt heavier than any storm cloud, a cold, empty space where warmth should have been. Soon after, a new sound joined the rustling of the autumn leaves. It started as a faint murmur, a whisper on the wind, that you could almost dismiss as your imagination. But it grew. It snaked down from the dark hill, weaving through the narrow lanes of the village, a chorus of faint, mournful whispers. They seemed to echo from the stone walls of the cottages and rise from the misty fields. The words were indistinct, a jumble of soft, sighing sounds. But the feeling they carried was unmistakable, a sense of being lost, of confusion. The souls were calling out, but without the lantern's light, their guide was gone. The children, usually giddy with the excitement of Halloween, huddled closer to their parents, their bags of sweets forgotten. The adults tried to reassure them, but their own faces were etched with worry. Where was Old Man Hemlock? Why was his lantern unlit? The whispers grew a little louder, a little more desperate, and the whole village seemed to hold its breath. Caught in the eerie silence between each ghostly sigh, the valley, once a place of comfort and tradition, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows, filled with lost voices calling out into the starless night. Among the villagers was a young girl named Alara. She had a spirit as fiery as her red hair and a heart full of stories her grandmother had told her. She'd always been fascinated by Old Man Hemlock and his yearly ritual. While others were now content to bolt their doors and whisper fearfully, Alara felt a different pull. She thought of the lost souls, not with fear, but with a deep, aching sympathy. They weren't trying to scare anyone. They were simply lost, searching for a path they could no longer see. And she couldn't bear the thought of them wandering endlessly in the dark. So, with a small oil lamp of her own clutched in her hand and her woolen cloak wrapped tightly around her, Lara slipped out of her cottage. The whispers seemed to swirl around her as she stepped into the lane, tugging at the edges of her cloak like curious, invisible hands. She took a deep breath, the cold night air filling her lungs, and set her sights on the dark, looming shape of Hollow Hill. She didn't know what she would find at the top, or what had happened to Old Man Hemlock, but she knew she had to try. Someone had to relight the way. The path up Hollow Hill was steep and winding, more challenging in the darkness than she'd ever imagined. Twisted roots snaked across the trail like grasping fingers, and the wind howled through the gnarled branches of the hawthorn trees, mimicking the whispers that followed her from the valley below. But Alara pushed on, her small lamp casting a brave, dancing circle of light around her feet. With every step, she felt a strange sense of purpose. It was as if the hill itself was testing her resolve, and the lost souls were watching, waiting. Finally, breathless and weary, she reached the summit. There, next to the large, flat stone, where the lantern always sat, was Old Man Hemlock. He wasn't hurt, but slumped over, his head in his hands, a picture of despair. His own lantern lay beside him, its glass shattered. "I slipped," he rasped, his voice hoarse with sorrow. "I fell in the lantern. It's broken. I've failed them. They're lost because of me." The whispers swirled around the hilltop, thicker and more sorrowful than ever. Alara looked at the old man's face, streaked with tears in the faint light of her lamp. Then she looked at his broken lantern, and finally at her own small, simple lamp. It wasn't as big or as bright as Hemlock's, but it was a light nonetheless. Without a word, she gently placed her own lamp upon the ceremonial stone. Its small golden flame flickered, but held steady against the wind. It was a tiny beacon against the vast, overwhelming darkness. And then a remarkable thing happened. As the light from Alara's lamp cast its humble glow across the hilltop, the whispers began to change. The mournful, confused sighs softened. They transformed into murmurs of gratitude. Soft whispers of thank you that brushed past Alara's cheeks like a gentle breeze. The lost souls hadn't needed a grand, powerful beacon. They just needed a light, offered with a kind and courageous heart. Down in the village, the people of Balanin saw the faint but steady pinprick of light appear atop Hollow Hill. A collective sigh of relief swept through the cottages. The eerie whispers faded, replaced by the familiar, comforting sounds of the autumn night. They didn't know the whole story yet, but they knew that someone had been brave enough to face the darkness. From that day on, Ilara and Old Man Hemlock tended the lantern together every Halloween. And the story was told not just of the lantern that guides the lost, but of the young girl who taught everyone that even the smallest light can make the biggest difference in the dark. Thank you so much for listening to this story tonight. I hope it brought a little bit of magic and mystery to your evening. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more tales and folklore. Sweet dreams. And may you always find a light in the darkness.
10-year-old Leo lived for Halloween. Not for the costumes, not for the spooky stories, but for the candy. This year, his mission was simple: collect more candy than anyone else in town. He had a map, a planned-out route, and a pillowcase big enough to haul a mountain of sugar. As the sun set, Leo, dressed as a surprisingly speedy zombie, was a blur of motion. Trick or treat, he'd mumble, grabbing fistfuls of chocolate bars and sour gummies before shuffling off to the next house. By the time the last porch light went out, his pillowcase was overflowing. Back in his room, he dumped his treasure onto the floor. It was glorious. A vibrant, crinkling mountain of pure victory. He ate a single peanut butter cup, savored its perfection, and fell asleep with a triumphant smile. The next morning, Leo woke up, his stomach already rumbling. He reached for the pile, grabbing a chewy caramel. He unwrapped it, popped it in his mouth, and was about to grab another when he noticed something odd. The spot where the caramel had been wasn't empty. A new, identical caramel sat in its place, its wrapper glinting in the morning light. He blinked. Weird. Maybe he'd just misremembered. He grabbed a sour gummy worm, ate it, and watched in disbelief as another identical worm wriggled its way to the surface of the pile, settling exactly where the first one had been. He tried again. A lollipop. Poof, another appeared. A miniature chocolate bar. Instantly replaced. It was a Halloween miracle. An endless supply of candy. For the first few days, it was paradise. Leo ate candy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He never had to share. He never had to worry about running out. He was the king of his own sugar kingdom. But after a week, the thrill began to fade. The taste of chocolate became boring. The chewiness of gummies a chore. His stomach constantly felt strange, and the bright colors of the wrappers started to seem sickly and artificial. The pile never got any smaller, a constant mocking monument to his greed. Then the whispers started. It began as a faint murmur, like the rustle of leaves, just on the edge of his hearing. He'd be lying in bed, the candy pile glowing faintly in the moonlight, and he'd hear it. Leo ... double quotes, a soft hissing sound. He'd sit bolt upright, his heart pounding. The room would be silent. He'd tell himself it was just the house settling, or the wind. But the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They weren't just coming from the corners of his room anymore. They were coming from the candy pile itself. Leo ... more. We want more ... Each crinkle of a wrapper sounded like a tiny, sinister laugh. The candy, once his treasure, now felt like 1,000 tiny eyes, watching him, waiting. He started to feel a gnawing emptiness that no amount of sugar could fill. The candy wasn't satisfying him. It was consuming him. One night, a voice, clearer than ever, slithered out from the pile. You wanted the most, Leo. Now you have it. Forever. The chocolate bars seemed to twist into menacing smiles. The gummy worms writhed as if they were alive. Terrified, Leo knew he had to get rid of it. He couldn't just throw it away. He knew it would just reappear. He needed a plan. The next morning, feigning a sudden burst of generosity, he stuffed his pockets with candy and headed to school. "Hey guys, want some candy?" he offered, his voice trembling slightly. His friends, surprised but delighted, happily took the treats. At lunch, he passed out more. On the playground, he shared his endless supply. For every piece he gave away, another would appear in his pocket, but he didn't care. He just kept giving. The whispers in his head seemed to quiet with every act of sharing. The gnawing emptiness began to be replaced by something warm, something he hadn't felt in weeks, the simple joy of a friend's smile. That evening, he invited his neighborhood friends over. They sat in a circle around the giant pile of candy. "Take as much as you want," Leo said, a genuine smile spreading across his face for the first time in ages. The kids cheered, diving in, their laughter filling the room. They shared stories, traded their favorites, and reveled in the sugary feast. As he watched them, Leo felt the last of the cold dread lift from his heart. The whispers were gone, replaced by the happy chatter of his friends. He reached into the pile and pulled out a single peanut butter cup. He unwrapped it and split it in half, giving one piece to his best friend Sam. As they ate it together, he looked at the candy pile. It was still huge, but it no longer felt menacing. It was just candy again. The next morning, he cautiously entered his room. The pile was still there. He picked up a piece, ate it, and another did not appear in its place. He ate another. The pile got smaller. It was over. The curse, or whatever it was broken. Leo learned a valuable lesson that year. Having the most of something doesn't mean anything if you can't share the joy it brings. From then on, Halloween wasn't about a competition. It was about dressing up, laughing with friends, and the sweet, simple pleasure of sharing a piece of candy. And he never, ever tried to have the biggest stash again. Thanks for watching our spooky little tale today. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures. Let us know in the comments what your favorite Halloween candy is. See you next time. The city noise always felt like a hum, a constant buzzing reminder that you were never truly alone. I used to find comfort in that. Now, the silence is what I crave. It all started on a Tuesday, one of those gray, indecisive autumn days. I was killing time before a meeting, wandering through the narrow, forgotten alleys of the old district. That's where I found it. A little antique shop, crammed between a modern cafe and a closed-down laundromat. The sign was so faded you could barely read the name. Curios and Echoes. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old paper, polished wood, and something else. Something like dried leaves and cold earth. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light, cutting through the gloom. It was a hoarder's paradise, a labyrinth of forgotten treasures and other people's memories. My eyes scanned shelves overflowing with tarnished silver, porcelain dolls with cracked faces, and stacks of yellowed postcards. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Or maybe I was looking for a story. And then I saw it, tucked away in a dark corner, hanging on a wooden stand. The mask. It wasn't like the cheap plastic things you see every October. This was made of hardened, treated leather, molded into a simple, almost featureless face. The eyes were just two dark, almond-shaped voids. The mouth was a thin, unsmiling line. It was painted a pale, bone white, but time had cracked the paint into a fine web, and a strange, dark stain marred one cheek, like a dried teardrop. It was unsettling, but I couldn't look away. It was beautiful, in a tragic sort of way. The old shopkeeper, A man whose face was as wrinkled as a topographical map, shuffled over. "Ah, you have a good eye," he rasped, his voice like rustling leaves. "That's an old one. A Samhain mask, they used to call it. From the old country. Said to be for communing with spirits on the night the veil is thinnest." He chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Just an old folktale, of course." I bought it without haggling. It felt like it was already mine, somehow. Back in my apartment, the mask sat on my coffee table, its empty eyes seeming to watch me. The city lights painted stripes across the walls, but the corner where the mask sat remained in shadow. That night, curiosity won. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. The leather was cold, smoother than it looked. I told myself it was just for a laugh, a silly, spooky thrill. I lifted it to my face. The moment the mask settled, the world dissolved. It wasn't a gradual fade. It was like a switch being flipped. The sounds of traffic vanished, replaced by the crackling of a massive bonfire and the rhythmic beat of a single heavy drum. The air, once sterile with city pollution, now smelled of wood smoke, wet soil, and pine. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was standing in a clearing, surrounded by colossal, ancient trees. People in rough, homespun clothes danced around the fire, their faces illuminated by the wild flames. And I wasn't just watching. I could feel the damp ground beneath my bare feet. I could feel the chill of the night air on my skin. I was someone else. Then, just as quickly, I was back, gasping for air. I ripped the mask off and threw it onto the sofa. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I was drenched in a cold sweat. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, silent and still. It was a hallucination, a trick of the light, the power of suggestion from the shopkeeper's story. That had to be it. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound caught in my throat. The smell of wood smoke lingered faintly in the air. Sleep didn't come easily. When I finally drifted off, the dreams were not my own. I dreamt of running through a forest, the branches of thorny bushes tearing at my arms. I dreamt of a woman's face, pale and terrified, reflected in a dark pool of water. I saw a man's hand, calloused and rough, reaching for me. I woke up with a scream trapped in my chest, the phantom sensation of running still tingling in my legs. The mask was on the floor, as if it had fallen or been dropped. Over the next few days, it became a morbid addiction. Each time I put on the mask, I was pulled back into that other life, that other time. The flashes became longer, clearer. I learned her name was Ilara. I felt her fear as the village elder, a grim-faced man with eyes like chips of flint, pointed a finger at her, his voice thundering accusations. I felt her desperate love for a young man, with kind eyes and a smile that never reached them. I felt the cold dread of being an outcast, whispered about, feared. These weren't just visions. They were memories, visceral and real. I felt her joys, her sorrows, her terror. But something was changing. The lines started to blur. Sometimes, during the day, I'd catch the scent of pine in the sterile office building where I worked. I'd see a flicker of firelight reflected in a skyscraper's window. Once, I looked in the mirror, and for a split second, I saw Lara's face instead of my own, her eyes wide with a terror that belonged to me now, too. The mask wasn't just showing me her past. It was merging it with my present. The worst part was the feeling of being watched, not just by the mask's empty eyes, but a constant, prickling sensation on the back of my neck, even when I was in a crowded subway car. I started researching Samhain rituals, the history of masks, anything I could find. I read about soul trapping, about objects that could hold an echo of a life, a powerful, violent emotion. An echo. That's what the shop was called. Curios and Echoes. I realized the shopkeeper hadn't been telling me a simple folktale. He'd been giving me a warning. This wasn't a one-way connection. While I was looking into Ilara's life, something was looking back. The mask didn't just contain her memories. It contained her asterisk. And she remembered being hunted, betrayed, and trapped. The stain on the mask, the dark teardrop, I now knew it wasn't a tear. I had felt the warm splatter on her asterisk ink. I had to get rid of it. But every time I decided to, a cold wave of panic would wash over me. A voice in the back of my head, a whisper that sounded like rustling leaves, would tell me not to. It told me Alara needed me, that we were connected, that if I abandoned her, I would be just like the others. The whispers were getting harder to ignore. I don't know which thoughts are mine anymore. Last night, I put the mask on one last time. I had to know how it ended. I saw the clearing again, but the fire was gone. There was only the moon, cold and white. I saw the grim-faced elder and a mob of villagers. I felt the rough rope against my wrists. I looked for the man with the kind eyes, but he wasn't there. He had abandoned her. Abandoned us asterisk. I felt a surge of rage so pure, so potent, it eclipsed the fear. It was an anger that had festered for centuries, waiting. When I took the mask off, my reflection in the dark window showed my own face. But my eyes, they weren't mine. They were filled with Alara's ancient rage. And in my hand, I was holding not the mask, but a shard of broken mirror, its edge sharp and glittering. The whispers are louder now. They're not just in my head anymore. They're in the room with me. The mask sits on the table, and I swear the thin line of its mouth is curved upwards, just slightly. It's not just a memory anymore. It's a promise. She was trapped in there for centuries. And now, I think she wants to live a little. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button and subscribe for more Tales from the Shadows. Let me know in the comments what you would have done with the mask. And as always, be careful what stories you go looking for. You might just find one that's looking for you too. The air bit with a late October chill, the kind that feels like a promise and a warning all at once. For me, Leo, Chloe, and Sam, it was the end of an era. One last Halloween, one final round of trick-or-treating before we were officially too old for this. We'd been doing this since we were 6, our costumes evolving from clumsy superheroes to the ironic, half-hearted monsters we wore tonight. I was a vampire, Leo a zombie, Chloe a witch, and Sam, ever the minimalist, just wore a ghost sheet with jagged eye holes. We set out as the sun bled out below the horizon, our laughter echoing in the twilight. But as we turned onto Elm Street, the usual cacophony of shrieking kids and festive doorbells was gone. A profound silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. The street was empty. Porch lights were off, and the jack-o'-lanterns on every step sat unlit, their carved grins looking more like grimaces in the gloom. "Weird," Chloe said, pulling her pointed hat down. "Did we get the date wrong?" "It's the 31st, I confirmed, checking my phone. The screen's glow felt intrusive in the darkness. "Maybe everyone's at that big town party?" Sam shrugged under his sheet. "More candy for us, then." He bounded up the steps to the first house, the old Miller place, and knocked. The sound was flat, absorbed by the silence. We waited. Nothing. He knocked again, louder this time. The only reply was the rustle of dry leaves skittering across the pavement. We tried the next house, and the next. The result was the same. A strange unease began to creep in, colder than the autumn air. It felt like we were walking through a ghost town, a forgotten photograph of a neighborhood. The familiar houses of our childhood looked alien and forbidding. "This is officially creepy," Leo mumbled, his zombie makeup looking pale under the moonlight. "I feel like we're being watched." He wasn't wrong. As we moved further down the street, I started to notice things. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. The faint sound of a child's giggle, so quiet I thought I'd imagined it. A swing on a distant playground, swaying gently back and forth, though there was no wind. Chloe stopped, her head tilted. "Did you guys hear that?" "Hear what?" Sam asked, but his voice was tight. "Singing," she whispered, "like a nursery rhyme." We all fell silent, straining our ears. And then I heard it too. A soft, melodic chant drifting from the shadows between the houses. It was a tune I hadn't heard in years, a simple playground song. But out here, in the dead quiet, it was chilling. Driven by a morbid curiosity we couldn't name, we followed the sound. It led us away from the main street, down a narrow, unpaved lane that ran behind the houses, a place we'd rarely explored. The singing grew clearer, a chorus of young voices, innocent and yet profoundly sad. The lane opened into a small, forgotten clearing, dominated by a single ancient oak tree. And there, gathered beneath its sprawling branches, were children, dozens of them. They were dressed in old-fashioned clothes, sailor suits, pinafores, and knitted sweaters. Some held hands, others skipped in a slow circular dance around the tree. They were translucent, their forms shimmering like heat haze against the dark woods. We froze, hidden at the edge of the clearing. These weren't kids from our neighborhood. These were spirits, the lost children of local legend, the ones parents used to warn us about in hushed tones, the ones who went out to play and never came home. One of them, a little girl in a faded blue dress with a single long braid, turned her head. Her eyes, wide and sorrowful, met mine. She wasn't scary. She was just lost. She raised a shimmering hand and pointed, not at us, but past us, back towards the street. The other children stopped their song and turned to look as well, their ghostly faces a mixture of longing and grief. A sudden, gut-wrenching understanding washed over me. They weren't haunting us. They were guiding us. This night wasn't for us. It was for them. This was their trick or treat, their one night to walk the streets they once called home. We were the intruders in their silent festival. The empty houses and dark porches. It was a sign of respect from a town that remembered its ghosts. "They're just kids," Chloe whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "They're just trying to go home." Sam slowly pulled the sheet off his head, his face pale. Leo's bravado had completely vanished. We stood there, 4 teenagers in silly costumes, bearing witness to a quiet, heartbreaking parade. The little girl in the blue dress took a hesitant step towards us. She didn't speak, but a thought, a feeling, echoed in my mind. Asterisk, will you walk with us? Asterisk, I looked at my friends. No words were needed. We all nodded in silent agreement. Slowly, we stepped out of the shadows and joined the procession. We didn't speak. We just walked, our solid forms moving amongst the shimmering spirits. We became part of their parade, a bridge between their world and ours. We walked with them back to the empty streets, our footsteps and the soft, rustling sound of their ghostly presence the only noises. They would pause at each dark house, their translucent faces turned towards the doors, as if waiting for an invitation that would never come. We'd wait with them, a silent vigil, before moving on. There was no fear anymore, only a deep shared sadness. We weren't 4 friends on a final adventure. We were escorts, guardians for these lonely souls. We saw our own childhoods reflected in their timeless, innocent forms, the scraped knees, the shared secrets, the simple joy of being a kid on Halloween. This wasn't about growing up anymore. It was about remembering. As the first hint of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, the spirits started to fade. Their forms grew thinner, more transparent. The little girl in the blue dress turned to us one last time. She gave a small, sad smile, a silent gesture of thanks, before dissolving completely into the morning mist. One by one, they all vanished, leaving us alone on the street as the first rays of sunlight touched the rooftops. The world began to wake up. A car started down the road. A dog barked in the distance. The spell was broken. We walked home in silence, our candy bags empty, but our hearts full of something we couldn't quite explain. That was our last Halloween together. We never went trick-or-treating again. We didn't need to. We had outgrown the costumes and the candy, but we would never outgrow the memory of that night. The night we walked with ghosts and understood that some traditions are kept alive, not for the living, but for those who can no longer go home. Thanks for watching our story. It's a reminder that there are layers to this world we don't always see. If you were moved by this tale, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Stay safe and always be kind. You never know who's walking beside you. They say every town has its ghost story, a local legend whispered around campfires and told to spook kids on Halloween night. In our town, that story is about the Blackwood Mansion. It's been sitting empty on the hill for as long as anyone can remember, a skeletal silhouette against the moon. But it's not the house itself. That's the heart of the legend. It's the mirror. The Blackwood Mirror, they call it. Every year, on Halloween night, it's said to materialize in the grand, dust-choked hallway of the mansion. The story goes that if you dare to stand before it on the stroke of midnight, you won't see your own face staring back. No, you'll see something far more unsettling. You'll see the version of you that, for some unknown reason, got trapped inside the mirror long ago. It's a chilling thought, right? A phantom twin, living a silent, glassy life, waiting for you to look in. Most people dismiss it as just that, a story. A fun little thrill to add to the Halloween season. But every legend has a seed of truth, doesn't it? And some people, the braver or perhaps more foolish ones, can't resist the pull of finding out for themselves. This year, that person was me. My name is Leo, and I've always been drawn to the unexplained. While my friends were carving pumpkins and planning costume parties, I was poring over old town records, trying to piece together the history of the Blackwood family and their cursed mirror. I found whispers of a tragedy, a disappearance, but the details were always hazy, lost to time. It only fueled my obsession. I had to know. So on Halloween, armed with a flashlight and a heart hammering against my ribs, I made my way up the overgrown path to the Blackwood Mansion. The wind howled through the broken window panes, sounding like a mournful cry. The front door creaked open with an unnerving ease, as if it were inviting me in. The air inside was thick, heavy with the smell of decay and forgotten memories. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, dancing over cobwebs that draped the furniture like ghostly shrouds. And there it was, at the far end of the long hallway, exactly where the legend said it would be. An ornate, full-length mirror, its silver frame tarnished with age, seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. It looked ancient, out of place, and utterly terrifying. My watch read 11:55 p.m. I had 5 minutes. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, to leave this place to its ghosts and go back to the safety of the normal world. But I couldn't. I had come this far. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing unnaturally in the cavernous space. The closer I got, the colder the air became. I stopped a few feet from it. My own reflection was faint, almost transparent, like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. I could see the dusty hallway through my own body. The clock on my watch ticked over. 11:58. The house fell completely silent. The wind died down. It was just me, the mirror, and the suffocating anticipation. 11:59. My breath hitched. I could see the reflection more clearly now. It was me, all right. Same messy brown hair, same wide, nervous eyes, same stupidly brave expression on my face. It was just a mirror. Relief began to wash over me, sweet and warm. It was all just a story. A silly, spooky story. I almost laughed. Then, the final seconds ticked away. Midnight. A deep, resonant chime echoed from somewhere deep within the house. like a grandfather clock striking its final hour. I held my breath, staring at my own image in the glass. Nothing happened. I let out a shaky sigh, and then it smiled. My reflection, it smiled, but my own lips hadn't moved. It was a slow, predatory grin that didn't reach its eyes. The eyes of my reflection were cold, ancient, and filled with a triumphant glee. My blood ran ice cold. My heart felt like it had stopped beating entirely. This wasn't me. This was something else wearing my face. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed, a statue of pure terror. The thing in the mirror slowly raised its hand, and I watched, horrified, as my own hand in the real world began to lift, mimicking the gesture against my will. It was like I was a puppet, and the reflection was pulling the strings. It pressed its palm flat against the cold surface of the mirror from the inside, and I felt an irresistible force pulling me forward. My own hand moved, inch by inch, until my fingertips touched the glass. It wasn't cold. It was warm, and it vibrated with a strange energy, humming like a live wire. The reflection's smile widened. It spoke, but its voice wasn't my own. It was a dry, rasping whisper that seemed to echo directly inside my skull. Finally, it hissed. After all this time, it's so good to be seen. My mind was reeling. This was the version of me that never left, the trapped one. But it didn't look trapped. It looked powerful. It looked hungry. What are you? I managed to choke out, my own voice barely audible. The reflection chuckled, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I am you, the you that wasn't afraid, the you that embraced the darkness in this house instead of running from it. I've been waiting for you, Leo, waiting for someone to look long enough. A terrifying realization dawned on me. The legend was wrong. You don't just see the reflection. You switch with it. He wasn't trapped in the mirror. I was about to be. The force pulling me increased, my hand now pressed firmly against the glass. The world around me started to warp and distort, the dusty hallway twisting into impossible shapes. The mirror's surface felt like water, and my hand began to sink into it. My turn to live a little, the reflection whispered, its eyes gleaming with malicious delight. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were floating outside my own body. My own face, the one in the mirror, was contorted in a mask of silent screaming. That was me now, the real me, trapped. The world on the other side became clearer. I could see the hallway, the cobwebs, a single beam from the flashlight lying on the floor. But it was all from a new perspective. A flat, silent perspective. I tried to move, to bang on the glass, but I was frozen, a prisoner behind a silvered pane. Out in the hallway, my body, his body now stretched and rolled its shoulders as if testing out a new suit. It picked up the flashlight, its movements fluid and confident. It turned back to the mirror, to me. It winked. "Don't worry," it said, my own voice now sounding cruel and alien. "I'll take good care of our life, and I'll be back next year. Maybe I'll even bring a friend to come see you." It turned and walked away, its footsteps confident and steady, leaving me behind in the suffocating silence of the mirror. The chime of the clock faded, and I was left alone in the dark, with nothing but my own terrified, silent face for company. I am the new ghost story of Blackwood Mansion, the boy in the mirror, and I'm waiting for someone else to be brave enough, or foolish enough, to come and look for me. So please be careful with legends. You never know which ones are waiting for you to become a part of them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more tales from the shadows, and ring that notification bell. Stay safe, and whatever you do, don't look in any strange mirrors on Halloween night. The city noise was all I'd ever known. The constant hum, the sirens, the feeling of being one tiny part of a massive, sleepless machine. So, when Mom and Dad announced we were moving to the countryside, to a farm my grandfather left us, it felt like being unplugged. The silence here is loud. It's filled with the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves, things I only ever heard in movies. Our new home is an old farmhouse, charming in a creaky, lived-in sort of way. It's surrounded by fields of corn and a sprawling apple orchard. But there's one patch of land just beyond the barn that everyone ignores. A forgotten pumpkin patch. Dad said Grandpa gave up on it years ago. The soil was stubborn, and nothing ever grew right. It's just a tangle of withered vines and a few sad, lumpy pumpkins that never quite ripened. It looks abandoned, forgotten. But at night, something strange happens. The first time I saw it, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A faint, soft glow was coming from the direction of that pumpkin patch. It wasn't a flashlight or a firefly, but a gentle, pulsing light like a heartbeat made of moonlight. I asked my parents about it, but they just laughed and said it was probably my city eyes getting used to the dark. They said I was imagining things, but I saw it again the next night and the night after that. A quiet, lonely beacon in the dark. Tonight, the curiosity is too much to bear. The moon is a silver sliver in the sky, and the air is crisp with the promise of autumn. From my bedroom window, I can see it again. That soft, ethereal light calling out from the dead pumpkin patch. My heart is pounding, a mix of fear and an undeniable pull I can't explain. I have to know what it is. I have to see it up close, slipping on my worn-out sneakers and grabbing a flashlight I probably won't even need. I quietly sneak out the back door. The old screen door groans in protest, and I freeze, listening for any sound from my parents' room. Nothing. Just the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Taking a deep breath, I step into the cool night air and head towards the glow. The grass is damp with dew, soaking the cuffs of my jeans. The closer I get to the patch, the stronger the light becomes. It's not just one light, but several, scattered across the field. Each glow seems to emanate from within the pumpkins themselves. They look like dozens of tiny, misshapen lanterns, casting long, dancing shadows on the ground. It's beautiful, but in an eerie, unsettling way. This isn't normal. Pumpkins don't just glow. I crouch down at the edge of the patch, my flashlight beam cutting a nervous path through the tangled vines. The air here feels different, colder, heavier, and there's a sound, a faint, barely audible whisper carried on the wind. It sounds like voices, many voices, all murmuring at once, too faint to make out any words, like a distant, sorrowful crowd. My hand trembles as I reach out to touch the nearest glowing pumpkin. It's cool to the touch, its skin smooth and strangely solid, not rotten like I expected. As my fingers make contact, the whispering intensifies, coalescing into a single clear voice right beside my ear. "Help us," it pleads, a voice that sounds ancient and tired. I snatch my hand back, scrambling away, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I stumble and fall, looking back at the field of glowing gourds. It wasn't my imagination. The pumpkins, they're talking. I can feel a presence in them, a consciousness. It's not just light trapped inside. It's something more, something alive. Taking a few deep, shaky breaths, I force myself to be brave. I didn't come all this way just to run away. I slowly approach the pumpkin again. This time, I lean in close, not touching it, just listening. The whispers are clearer now. "Free us before the sun rises. The vine-keeper trapped us here. Don't let the light fade." I look from one glowing pumpkin to another, and now I see it. Inside each one, swirling within the soft light, is a faint, shadowy form. A silhouette, a face. They're like spirits trapped inside these strange organic prisons. Souls. Each glowing pumpkin holds a soul. and they're all looking at me, their spectral forms pressing against their pumpkin walls, their silent screams echoing in my mind. My fear is slowly being replaced by a sense of awe and a heavy weight of responsibility. Who is the vine keeper? Why would someone trap souls in a pumpkin patch? And what happens at dawn? The whispers grow more urgent. The first light will bind us forever. Break the curse. You are the only one who can see us. I realize they're right. My parents can't see the light. Maybe it's a kid thing, or maybe it's something else entirely. But for whatever reason, I was led here. I'm the one who found them. I look at the sky. The eastern horizon is already starting to blush, with the faintest hint of gray. Dawn is coming. I don't have much time. My mind races. How do you free a soul from a pumpkin? Do I smash them? That seems violent and wrong. The whispers seem to sense my confusion. The master vine, a voice murmurs. It feeds on our light. Find the heart of the patch. Sever the connection. The master vine. I scan the field, my eyes following the intricate network of withered tendrils. They all seem to lead towards the center of the patch, where one gnarled, thick vine twists out of the ground like a dark, woody artery. It doesn't glow. It seems to absorb the light around it, a patch of pure darkness in the midst of the glowing field. That has to be it. I need something to cut it. I race back to the barn, my footsteps loud in the pre-dawn stillness. Inside, hanging on the wall, are my grandpa's old tools. I grab a rusty but sturdy-looking pair of pruning shears. They feel heavy in my hands, a tool for gardening now tasked with something much, much bigger. When I get back to the patch, the glow of the pumpkins seems weaker, more desperate. The sky is getting brighter. I push through the tangled vines, ignoring the way they seem to snag at my ankles, trying to hold me back. I reach the center and stand before the master vine. It's thicker than my arm and feels cold and strangely alive beneath my touch. The whispers are a frantic chorus now. Hurry. It's almost time. She's coming. I place the jaws of the shears around the thickest part of the vine. It's tough, like cutting through bone. I put all my weight into it, gritting my teeth, my muscles straining. The vine resists, and a low groan echoes through the patch, a sound of pure malice that makes my skin crawl. With a final desperate heave, the shears snap shut. Asterisk crack. Asterisk, the master vine is severed. For a moment, everything goes silent. Then, a wave of energy erupts from the cut. The glowing pumpkins flare up, shining as brightly as the midday sun. The light bursts from them, shooting up into the sky in brilliant streams of white and gold. The shadowy forms within are gone. One by one, the streams of light fade into the morning sky, and the pumpkins go dark, becoming just ordinary withered gourds. The eerie cold is gone, replaced by the gentle warmth of the rising sun. The whispers have stopped. The field is silent, truly silent this time. I stand there, panting, the shears still in my hand, as the first rays of sunlight spill over the horizon, bathing the farm in a golden glow. I don't know if I'll ever tell anyone what happened, but as I walk back to the house, I know one thing for sure. The countryside isn't so quiet after all. It's just listening for the right person to hear its secrets. Thank you so much for joining me on this eerie adventure. What do you think happened to the souls? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the unknown. See you next time. Every town has one, doesn't it? That one house, the one the kids whisper about, the one the adults cross the street to avoid. In our town, it was the old Blackwood Manor, perched on a hill at the very edge of everything, looking down on us like a silent, stone-faced judge. It wasn't just old and creepy, though. It was active. Every single Halloween, without fail, the Blackwood Manor would come to life. Jack-o'-lanterns would appear on the porch, their grins flickering with an eerie orange light. String lights, shaped like tiny ghosts and skulls, would blink along the eaves. You could even see a fire crackling in the massive stone fireplace through the dusty front window. And the strangest part? A giant bowl of candy, always full to the brim, would sit right on the doorstep. But here's the thing. No one had lived in Blackwood Manor for over 50 years. The last owner, a recluse named Silas Blackwood, vanished one Halloween night, leaving behind nothing but a half-eaten dinner and a house full of shadows. The town just sort of forgot about him. But the house didn't forget Halloween. This year, Leo, Maya, and Sam decided they'd had enough of the whispers and the legends. They were 12, on the cusp of being too old for trick-or-treating, and they needed one last great Halloween adventure. Their plan was simple. Walk up to the Blackwood Manor, take a piece of candy, and prove once and for all that it was just some elaborate town prank. As they climbed the hill, the air grew colder. The usual sounds of the neighborhood laughter, distant music, cars faded away, replaced by the rustle of dead leaves and the creak of the iron gate as they pushed it open. The house loomed over them, a black silhouette against the bruised purple sky. The jack-o'-lanterns on the porch seemed to watch their every move, their carved eyes following the trio as they crept up the stone steps. There it was, the candy bowl, a huge ornate silver thing, overflowing with every kind of chocolate and sweet imaginable. It looked brand new, polished to a mirror shine, reflecting their own nervous faces. "See? I told you," Sam whispered, his voice trembling a little. "It's just candy." He reached a shaky hand toward the bowl. "Wait," Maya said, grabbing his arm. "Don't you think it's weird? Who puts this here?" Leo, ever the brave leader, scoffed. "Who cares? It's free candy." He stepped forward, but instead of taking a treat, he balled his hand into a fist and did something none of them had ever dared to do. He knocked on the door. Asterisk knock, 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 asterisk. The sound was shockingly loud in the silence. It echoed, seeming to be swallowed by the house itself. For a moment, nothing happened. The three of them stood frozen, holding their breath. "See? Nothing," Leo said, a nervous grin spreading across his face. "Just an empty old house." And then, from deep within the manor, a sound. A low, groaning creak. Not like a floorboard settling. It was a deep, guttural sound, like something ancient and heavy was shifting. Asterisk cree-eek. Asterisk slowly, impossibly, the huge oak door began to swing inward. It opened into a vast, dark foyer. The only light came from the fireplace they'd seen from the street, its flames casting long dancing shadows that looked like grasping fingers. The air that drifted out was thick with the smell of dust, old wood, and something else. Something sweet and cloying, like wilting flowers. They stood paralyzed on the welcome mat. They should have run. Any sane person would have bolted down that hill and never looked back. But they were caught in the house's gravity, pulled by a curiosity that was stronger than their fear. From the darkness inside, a voice whispered. It wasn't a human voice. It was dry and raspy, like the rustle of 1,000 dead leaves. "Trick or treat," Sam screamed. Maya grabbed Leo's arm, her knuckles white. But Leo, mesmerized, took one step forward, peering into the gloom. "Who's there?" He called out, his voice a squeak. The whispering voice answered, seeming to come from the very walls around them. "Won't you come inside? There's so much candy." As if on cue, the silver bowl on the doorstep began to rattle. The candy inside swirled, rising up like a colorful vortex. Then, pieces began to float out of the bowl and drift through the open doorway, disappearing into the darkness one by one, as if beckoning them to follow. This was no prank. This was real. The house wasn't just decorated. It was alive. and it was inviting them in. Maya finally found her voice. "Leo, no, let's go." She pulled him back, and the three of them stumbled backward off the porch. As they turned to run, the front door didn't slam shut. It closed with a soft, deliberate asterisk click asterisk. The sound was somehow more terrifying than a slam. It was patient. The jack-o'-lanterns on the porch suddenly flickered and went out, plunging the front of the house into darkness. All except one, the one right in the center. Its carved grin seemed to widen, and its flickering light pulsed like a slow, beating heart. They didn't stop running until they were back in the bright, cheerful lights of their own street, gasping for air, their hearts pounding in their chests. They didn't tell anyone what happened. Who would believe them? But they knew. They knew the Blackwood Manor wasn't just an empty house. It was waiting. It was hungry. And every Halloween, it set a trap, decorating itself, offering sweets, and whispering invitations into the dark. It was fishing. And they were the ones that almost got away. To this day, every time Halloween rolls around, I see them, Leo, Maya, and Sam, now adults with kids of their own. They make sure their children stay on the well-lit streets, far from the edge of town, because they know that up on that hill, the lights are on, the fire is lit, and the candy bowl is full. The house remembers them, and it's still waiting, patiently, for someone new to knock. Thanks so much for watching this spooky story. If you enjoyed this trip into the shadows, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. And for more tailies that'll make you check under your bed, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay safe out there this Halloween, and we'll see you in the next video.